From the land of 10,000 lakes, duck, duck, grey duck, and bugle-playing chimney sweeps, this is Minnesota Unknown. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into Minnesota's storied past, with a special emphasis on the surprising, the unusual, and little-known history hidden in plain sight. My name is Alex Weston.
And I am Josie Bergman.
And I'm Hannah Norton.
And we are Minnesota Unknown.
Welcome to the first episode of our podcast. We are three history-obsessed Minnesotans who used to work for the State Historical Society and have a lot of background in researching things and always found ourselves kind of going down weird little rabbit holes. And so eventually we said, well, why don't we just turn that into our own business? So now we have a tour company where you too can learn all about the weird stuff that we find interesting, and hopefully you'll find it interesting too. And then we had too many weird things that we were interested in, so now we've made a podcast.
And we thought that we would start with something that was a mutual obsession of the three of us well before we ever dreamed of starting our own walking tour company. And that is a man named Slunky Norton.
Slunky Norton.
Our hero.
To start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about how did you first come across Slunky?
At the time we met, we were all working at the James J. Hill House. This is the 1891 historic mansion of Railroad Baron James J. Hill on Summit Avenue in St. Paul. Now, while researching things at the Hill House, one of our main sources was a diary kept by James J. Hill's wife, Mary. And in a couple entries, she mentions Slunky Norton cleaning the chimneys, but also seems to mention that it's a performance and that her grandkids loved to witness all this.
So we have this quote here. Josie can go ahead.
So this is from Wednesday, May 31st, 1899. Mary and James have had novel amusement this forenoon. Slunky Norton is cleaning the chimneys, and from their tops he every little while blows a blast or plays a tune on his horn. Mary feels grieved this afternoon. Her parrot has died.
So, what caught our ears is Slunky Norton. Great name.
He shares my last name, and you might be wondering, is he related to me? And the answer, of course, is no.
But Slunky, great name. But also, he's cleaning the chimneys and blows a blast or plays a tune on his horn. A bugle-playing chimney sweep is the kind of thing that piqued my interest. Now, we assumed that her granddaughter Mary and her dead parrot is unrelated.
But you would be surprised.
Just hold on to that thought. We have at least one dead bird.
Hold on to the dead parrot.
This is an ex-parrot.
Not to belabor the point, she writes another entry a few years later, Wednesday, April 30th, 1902.
Slunky Norton is cleaning the chimneys today, and consequently, James is rather glad he is at home to witness the performance.
Naturally, now we're curious about this Slunky. Who is he? Why is he cleaning the chimneys? And why is that a performance? Our first instinct was to Google Slunky Norton, which brought us to an article from the Ramsey County History magazine, published by the Ramsey County Historical Society. In their winter 2003 issue, they published an article called Slunky Norton, the chimney sweep who rocked the rafters with his buglers. This article was a first-person account from Albert W. Lindicky Jr., who grew up in St. Paul's prestigious Summit Avenue Mansion District in the early 1900s. In his words, quote, Slunky Norton, a hard-working, loquacious character, was a well-known chimney sweep in the Hill District of St. Paul in the early decades of the 20th century. An interesting facet of his career was that, in addition to his professional duties, Norton acquired a small group of professional buglers to accompany him on his rounds on special occasions. So, there we have it, a chimney sweep with a troupe of buglers. In fact, we would later discover that Albert Lindicky Jr. wasn't the only St. Paulite to have slunky memories. Slunky turns up in a lot of memoirs and recollections from people who grew up in St. Paul in the early 1900s. Slunky's act was particularly beloved by children. Most accounts don't mention a whole troupe, but the image of a bugle-playing chimney sweep named Slunky is etched in the minds of St. Paulites of a certain generation. For example, here's a quote from a 1981 Star Tribune article in which an unnamed couple who were then in their 80s or 90s recalled, quote,
Slunky Norton was the chimney sweep. He'd come in a horse-drawn wagon, crawl up on someone's roof, and just before he started cleaning a chimney, he'd blow his bugle, and children and dogs would come running from blocks around.
A lot of people specifically recalled Slunky in connection to Christmas, sometimes even dressing up as Santa Claus, and according to some accounts, coming down people's chimneys. One family that Slunky as Santa visited was the family of lumber baron Horace Irvin, who had a mansion on Summit that today is used as the Minnesota governor's residence. On the official governor's residence website, it states, one of Olivia Irvin's earliest memories is watching Santa arrive on Christmas Eve covered in snow and stomping his feet. Years later, she learned that Santa was actually Slunky Norton, the family's chimney sweep. Albert Lindeke Jr., who we quoted earlier, also had fond memories of Slunky spreading holiday cheer. He wrote, "One of Norton's favorite times and places to appear in concert with his troupe of buglers was during the holidays on Lower Summit Avenue. Norton rented or somehow acquired a hook and ladder truck to transport his crew. Their costumes were full-length wool coats and peaked red caps trimmed with white, Santa Claus style. They were an impressive bunch, as they made the rounds of the city looking for well-lit houses and signs of festive occasions where they might make a surprise visit, perform on their bugles, and receive a cheering cup. Clearly etched in my memories of childhood was one Christmas Eve at our family home where the traditional large holiday dinner for about 30 friends and relatives was in progress. Suddenly, our front door was thrust open and in burst Norton and at least 5 or 6 of his red-coated men. The buglers put their instrument to their lips and let forth a shrieking blast. The noise was deafening. Slunky's crew exited with shouts and went on their way to find another unsuspecting target for invasion. The only casualty of their holiday visit to our house that night was that our canary swooned and died in his cage, presumably of a heart attack, as the result of the alarming blast that rocked the rafters."
Now earlier, we had assumed that the dead parrot mentioned in Mary Hill's diary was unrelated, but now we're not so sure.
Maybe the dead parrot was related. Still, questions remained. Our next step then was to search through digitized newspaper collections, and this yielded some tantalizing new clues. For starters, Slunky is referenced offhandedly in a lot of local newspaper articles, always with the indication that he was well known to everybody who might have been reading this. Several articles used slang or a colloquial turn and would put the phrase in quotes followed by, "as Slunky Norton would say," so apparently he was a local celebrity known for his aphorisms. He was not only well known locally, but drew the attention of visitors. In a Vermont newspaper in 1897, a travel writer named Mrs. C.M. Gillette wrote a column about her visit to St. Paul, and devoted a whole paragraph to Slunky Norton and the city's chimney sweeps.
St. Paul did not impress me as a city of many sounds. The most noise made by any faction were the chimney sweeps. There are many of them, not boys, but men of small stature. I saw them on foot, wearing peaked hats, fantastic clothing, and with blackened faces, also in little carts drawn by mules. Both footmen and riders would have been a credit to a gorgeous parade. Every sweep carried a bugle, and unless working in a chimney, often announces his whereabouts with a few sweet notes from the instrument. Were you to clap your hands in the streets of St. Paul and call "Slunky Norton"? Every unemployed chimney sweep within the sound of your voice would appear. You may wonder where they come from, and which way they are going. That they are individually and collectively Slunky Nortons is all that anyone is permitted to know about them.
That raises as many questions as it answers. So apparently all the chimney sweeps in St. Paul played the bugle and answered to the name Slunky Norton. Was Slunky Norton maybe a kind of title used by various people? This also established that they dressed in, quote, fantastic clothing. She visited in September, so the peaked hats weren't just their holiday wear. We have a number of accounts here drawn from Minnesota newspapers of chimney sweeps adopting similar attention-getting clothing and tactics, though these seem to have varied wildly. But I'll just rattle off a few of these quotes. So from the St. Paul Globe in 1883, "That chimney sweep with a howl and a song emerged from a Wabasha Street chimney yesterday afternoon and astonished a crowd of spectators by jumping out upon the roof and dancing over it with the abandon of an English sparrow."
I also like to dance with the abandon of an English sparrow.
Yep.
Till Slunky comes.
In 1896, the Minneapolis Tribune noted, and I'll note that 1896 was an election year, it says, "I've noticed a new use for campaign buttons. 2 chimney sweeps are going about with their jackets completely covered with buttons, and above their rouged and blackened faces are conical hats decorated with festoons of buttons bearing every motto and device that was evolved during the campaign." And a letter to the editor written by a 5th grader from Monticello, Minnesota, published in the Minneapolis Journal in 1899 says, "The oddest thing I ever saw was a hat that a chimney sweep wears. The hat is trimmed with kinds of flag pins, feathers, and paper flowers, and has pictures pasted on it. Hanging down from this hat are dress trimmings of pins of all kinds." On the subject of bugle-playing chimney sweeps, we also found a short essay written by a high school student that was published in the Minneapolis Journal in 1907. In a piece titled "The Man with the Horn," Cleveland High School sophomore Inez Peterson wrote,
How often we see a crowd of children running down the street from many directions, and we wonder if there is a fire or if somebody has been hurt. But while we wonder, the musical sound of a horn reaches our ears, and soon a little yellow house on wheels comes into view, and we recognize the chimney sweep. He is a very jolly fellow, clad in a suit of dirty overalls, a small round cap which is generally placed on the back of his head or on one side, and leggings which reach to his knees. His hands and face are sooty, but it seems as if the more black and dirty he is, the better the children like him.
The horn carried by the chimney sweep plays an active part in his work, and the children seem to think that without its lively music, he could not be in existence. His duty seems to be to drop a square piece of iron attached to a rope down the chimney, and then pull it up again to loosen the soot and to amuse the passers-by. Sometimes he may be seen standing at the edge of the chimney, alternately blowing his horn and shouting at the children below. The assumed names like Black Jack, Slim Jim, and Slunky Norton seem characteristic of this kind of business. Although the chimney sweep has disagreeable work, he takes it very good-naturedly, and is altogether more interesting than the everyday peddler or rag picker.
So it seems that maybe other chimney sweeps in addition to Slunky Norton played the bugle. We looked up Black Jack and Slim Jim and found a couple of classified ads advertising their services as chimney sweeps, but there were no connected references to bugle playing, and neither seemed to have the notoriety of Slunky.
And I do want to say, the travel writer mentioned if you yell in the streets of St. Paul, a herd of Slunky Nortons will come around. And she says they're collectively known as Slunky. So it's almost this like sort of nickname, like kind of like a mall Santa Claus kind of thing. Like they're all Santa Claus.
Actually, that's probably
but there's only one Santa.
That's actually probably a really good comparison, because in the newspaper articles that we found, there are times where it seems to refer to any bugle-playing chimney sweep, and it seems like all the chimney sweeps here played the bugle. They're all Slunky Norton. And yet there's also an acknowledgement that
there is only one
true Slunky Norton. There's Slunky Prime. You see this most clearly, I think, in some of the baseball coverage on the sports page. This was a time when a lot of working class neighborhoods, as well as businesses, they all had their own community baseball team. And one of them was a team apparently made up of chimney sweeps, and the team was called the Slunky Nortons. And we have all these articles about the Slunky Nortons plural, but some of them also mention Slunky Norton singular. So there was a game between two teams that the Slunky Nortons was not one of them, but the article ends with saying that Slunky Norton presented the winning team with a ball and bat. Long live Slunky. Clearly there's Slunky the individual, and then there's Slunky the
man, the myth, the legend.
Slunky the broader identity. Like, we're all Slunky.
Before we move on, you mentioned those baseball teams. Josie, would you like to go over a few of the other names of the teams?
So up first, we have the City Meats, the Burlingtons, the Minnehaha's, the Charles Street Stars, the Pioneer Business Team, the Great Northern Shop, and of course, the Central Cheese Team.
I'll be Central Cheese Team.
I'm obviously the City Meats. Yeah.
So it's almost like a St. Paul folkloric character that's common enough to be noticed by travelers. There's more than one of him, but the character, there's only one of that character. Yeah. But there's also, just to kind of wrap this up, you found an interview with Slunky.
I did, yeah. And this took some digging. And by digging, I mean, it took realizing that in the 19th century, names could be spelled multiple ways. So we're relying on a lot of this on digitized newspaper archives. The rookie mistake we were all making is we were spelling Slunky exactly the way Mary Hill did, which, again, we found enough there that that's a frequent spelling. It's Slunky. But our friend Joe, shout out to him, had the idea of searching for Slunkey.
I guess you could say it would be the key to success.
It would. Once we searched for Slunky with an EY, and a whole bunch more turned up, including an interview with the man himself in which he revealed his true name, Louis A. Stolp. So with that, we could actually start finding him in the city directories. He's listed under his real name there, listed as a chimney sweep. He's listed on censuses. He told census takers that he was a draft expert. But this interview done in 1898 with the St. Paul Globe is just a gold mine, and we'll quote from it extensively.
Yeah, so when we're looking through the interview, it begins...
Slunky Norton, unlike many celebrities, does not require an extended introduction to St. Paul. Every man, woman, and child who lives in a house that has a chimney knows him. Those who have not had business dealings with him know him by his blackened face, his odd costume, his yellow wagon, and his cream-colored horse, Harry. Contrary to general belief, Slunky Norton is not the chimney sweep's real name. In fact...
But Slunky Norton sounds like such a very real name.
It's such a... yeah. Well, apparently he was born Louis A. Stolp, and he was born in 1859 in New York City to two parents who were both German immigrants. And his family liked to boast that they were descended from the poet Johann von Schiller. At the time, Schiller was a big deal in Germany and among German Americans. And in St. Paul, the U.S. German Society of St. Paul actually erected a statue of Schiller in Como Park in 1907. It's still there. It's near the entrance to the Como Park Conservatory on Lexington Avenue today. Anyway, the author of the article comments, "A descendant of Schiller sweeping chimneys? Ye gods in Himmel! And then he quotes Slunky as saying, "That's right. That's how I came by my bump of observation and my keen appreciation of the beautiful in nature. It's the poet in me. But what of it? Schiller never made $1 for me. I have to hustle for myself. So when I'm on an exploring expedition in the woods or on the prairie, I'm Schiller. But when I'm sweeping chimneys, I'm Slunky Norton. Toho, yo-ho, yo-ho!" It goes on to describe a bit of his life. His family was actually quite wealthy, and I later confirmed this by looking up censuses and things. They became major players in the New York Produce Exchange, and they wanted Slunky to either become a stockbroker or to enter West Point Academy, but such a life was not for Slunky. Again, in his words, "But I wished to be independent. I did not want to be tied down to business, so when a young man I came west. I settled first in St. Cloud, and there it occurred to me first that I could make a living as a chimney sweep, and I could be master of my own time and trade. So I started in. Of course, Stolp was no name for a chimney sweep. I wanted a name appropriate to my calling that would advertise me. I put a good deal of thought into the matter, and then I remembered that in my school class in New York there was an Indian boy named Slunky Norton. That was the name for me, so I adopted it and copyrighted it and have been known by it ever since. I remained in St. Cloud until all the chimneys were cleaned, and then I went to Fargo, North Dakota, where I entered into a partnership with Red Bill."
Oh, of course.
Okay, now, I'll pause here. I, of course, then looked up Red Bill in the Fargo papers and couldn't find anything on him. But I did find a classified ad in an 1889 issue of the Fargo Daily Argus, in which a chimney sweep known as Dick Suit says, "The individual known as Slunky Norton has in a recent issue of the Argus taken a novel way of advertising himself by stating that I was a partner of his. I am not a partner of his and have no connection with any other chimney sweep."
Well, this is
So, yeah, he took out a classified ad to set the record straight.
as he should.
I don't know if Slunky's necessarily the most reliable narrator.
Is he not wanting to be associated with Slunky?
Apparently.
Because
Which is funny, because Slunky seems to have such a great reputation in St. Paul, but we don't know what he was up to in Fargo. So then he continues. He says, "But the town of Fargo was not large enough for 2 sweeps, so I quit and came to St. Paul. At that time, there were 9 chimney sweeps in the city, and they were continually fighting and quarreling. And I went to the quarrelsome 9 and urged them to stop fighting and work together. But they told me to mind my own business. 'All right,' I said, 'if we can't pull together, I'll have to get after you,' and I did. And the result is I'm alone in the business now."
Did Slunky Norton kill 9 chimney sweeps?
I don't know. And again, I don't think he's the most reliable narrator here, so his insistence that he works alone is contradicted by a number of the other newspaper articles, which mention assistants, to say nothing of a troop of buglers. But I actually found some classified ads taken out by Slunky when he needed new assistants. So, I don't know, maybe by alone he just means that he's the boss and not a co-equal partner with anyone. But the interview continues. He goes on to describe his process. He said, "No, I don't go inside chimneys. The outside is good enough for me. When chimney sweeps have to go inside, Slunky Norton will retire from business." So the writer of the piece narrated that Slunky exhibited his paraphernalia for chimney sweeping. There were a number of heavy stuffed bags in an arrangement that looked like a big sunflower. The pedals were of steel and stem of rope and chain and perfectly coupled, and at the end was an iron ball with a pivot.
Kinky.
"There he is," said Slunky, "holding the thing up. That's the fellow that does the business. He's the sweep. I just let him down a flue and he follows that ball, and the ball can roll in any direction the chimney may turn, and there isn't any soot that can hide from him. Those bags? They're to stop fireplaces so the soot won't get into rooms. When I've taken those precautions, I climb up the front or the rear of the house. I'm like a cat and go anywhere. When I reach the roof, I take a rope and throw it over a chimney top and pull myself up. Then it's yo-ho, 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 and a blast of my trumpet. That attracts attention. When I get on a chimney top with my blue suit and little peaked cap and blow that trumpet, I'm a picture." And last but not least, the interview article confirmed the stories we've already heard about Slunky's Christmas activities. The author of the piece writes, "Slunky is at all times fond of children, and at Christmas he gives himself unrestrainedly to them. Who has not seen him on Christmas Eve, dressed as Santa Claus, driving about the city, accompanied by a bodyguard of buglers? All night long he makes the circuit of the town, and children, awakened by silver bugles, know that Santa Claus is passing." This interview, in addition to giving us at least his version of his own story, the most important detail there was his real name, Louis A. Stolp. So with that, we were able to not just search newspapers, but search city directories and censuses and other types of records. So from that, I learned that he had a wife, Louise. She was from Wisconsin and also a child of German immigrants. They had at least 5 kids. With only censuses to go off of, it's sometimes hard to know when a kid moved out and when a kid passed away. As we know, child mortality was high, but they had at least 5 kids. Most of the time that they spent in St. Paul, they were living on Western Avenue, just north of where 94 is today. And later in life, they moved into a house on Grand Avenue near Hamlin Avenue. Now, by the 1920s, he seems to have retired from sweeping chimneys, but he continued to work as Santa Claus. And for a time in the 1920s, he had a weekly radio show called Children's Hour with Slunky on WCCO radio, where he read children's stories. And he would have specials on Christmas Eve, reading Christmas stories. Clearly, his love of children seems to have gone beyond just, this is a marketable gimmick. Like, he seems to have, that has been part of his personality.
Even though sometimes his bugle playing killed their parents.
Clearly, he was a character, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by a guy that grows up in privilege and is like, I'm going to go out west and clean chimneys. He had an individualistic streak. He could have been an officer in the U.S. military at West Point. He could have been a stockbroker in New York.
And he chose to be a chimney sweep.
So tell us about, where did he end up? How did he fare?
He's still alive today, in our hearts.
Louis Stulp, a.k.a. Slunky Norton, died in 1930. His cause of death is unknown. So here's how his obituary read. It says, after returning from the St. Paul Loop, where he had been following an annual custom of soliciting funds for Christmas parties for children, Louis A. Stulp, 71, known to thousands for 40 years as a chimney sweep, philosopher, and friend of children, died Monday at his home.
Oh,
To close things out, I'll give the final words to the last thing he says in the 1898 interview.
See, would you play us out with the words of Slunky?
But there's a chimney over there that I must sweep. So goodbye. Yo-ho, yo-ho, yo-ho. Ta-ra, ra-ra, ra-ra, ra-ra.
So thank you for going on this journey with us.
And until next time, dance with the abandon of an English sparrow.
Indeed. Long life to Slunky.
Ta-ra, ra-ra-ra.
Ra-ra-ra-ra.
Ra-ra.
And that's it for this episode. But wait, there's more. Our original edit of this episode was about twice as long, mostly because we went on a deep dive into the broader history of chimney sweeps. We talked about the evolution of the profession from its origins in the 1500s all the way through the 20th century, and looked at regional differences between chimney sweeping in Britain, the US, and continental Europe. Ultimately, we decided to cut most of this background material and keep the episode focused on Slunky and St. Paul. However, we think it was a really interesting conversation full of fascinating discoveries, and it really helps put Slunky in the broader context of chimney sweeps who doubled as entertainers, which has a surprisingly long lineage. So we're going to be releasing that conversation as a special bonus episode in just a few days. We think you'll enjoy it. Meanwhile, we'll be back next Wednesday with another all-new topic. You can find detailed show notes for this and all episodes at minnesotaunknown.com/podcasts. We'll post a link there to each episode along with features such as accompanying images, links to more info, and lists of sources cited. If you have questions, comments, corrections, complaints, or compliments, or would like to suggest a topic for a future episode, please email us at info@minnesotaunknown.com. We'd truly love to hear from you. You can find Minnesota Unknown anywhere that you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss an episode. And if you have a moment, please rate and review. That would really help others find us. We also give history walking tours in and around the Twin Cities. To learn about our current and upcoming tours, head to minnesotaunknown.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Minnesota Unknown is produced, hosted, written, and researched by Hannah Norton, Josie Bergman, and myself, Alex Weston. This episode was edited by me. Our theme song is by Union Shakedown. This episode is copyright 2025 by Minnesota Unknown, LLC. All rights reserved.